Welcome to General Biology. Today's video is going to be about cell membranes. This is a micrograph of a cell membrane. A micrograph means that it's a picture taken with an electron microscope. So we can see in the micrograph that we definitely have a bilayer. You can see the heads on both sides. There's heads right here and there's heads right here. Can't really see the tails in the middle, but we can definitely tell it's a bilayer from this picture. This bilayer that looks like this is made up of phospholipids. Phospholipids are just a modified triglyceride. So one of the fatty acids is removed and we add a phosphate group to it instead. The phosphate group happens to be polar. So because it's polar, it's attracted to water. And so the heads are attracted to water, and the tails, because they're nonpolar, they don't like to mix with water. Fat doesn't like to mix with water. If you've ever dumped oil into a pot of water, that just kind of bubbles up on top. Because there's water both outside and inside the cell, the cell membrane forms a bilayer. So that bilayer looks like this. You have all your phospholipids, or all your fatty acids from the phospholipids are in the middle, and the polar heads from the phospholipids are on the outside and the inside of the bilayer. The bilayer also has a bunch of proteins embedded in it. So some of these proteins are going to go the entire distance. Some are only going to go part way through, and they have multiple purposes, which we'll talk about in a minute. A lot of times we think of this membrane as being fluid, okay? And so think of it like apples floating in a barrel of water. I could stick my hand in here and mix these apples up, and they would reset, and they would reset in the same layer, but the apples would be in different locations. So that's kind of how the cell membrane is. It's constant flux, it's always moving around, but the layer still stays the same. This layer is going to act like a screen. It's going to be semi-permeable. Some things are going to be able to move through. Some things aren't. It's like a screen in a window. Bugs can't get through, but if somebody's cooking outside, the odors from their hamburgers on the grill comes right through, and you're like, ooh. So think of it like this. You have some molecules that can move right through the membrane, and some molecules can't. And it's going to depend on the characteristics of those molecules, whether or not they can move through or not. So these are the three types of proteins I told you about. So we have recognition proteins. These are basically designed so the cells can be recognized by the immune system as self. If we can't recognize it as self, then the immune system will try to attack and destroy it. So it's pretty important to have recognition proteins on our body. Sometimes our immune system gets screwed up and it attacks our own cells because it doesn't recognize them properly. And we call those autoimmune disorders. This is a receptor protein. Receptor proteins are going to bind to hormones or things or other molecules that are floating around inside the bloodstream or extracellular fluid. And basically a molecule will bind here and it will change the shape of this and cause a cascade of instructions to start taking place. And then we have a transport protein. They can either be channels, like this one, open channels, or they can be active transport proteins that work more like pumps.